The KMG Freakout is a smaller pendulum-style ride that was first introduced in the early 2000s or late 90s by KMG. It differs from an afterburner in that it's slightly easier to transport, and it swings front to back rather than left to right. It also seats fewer riders, only 16 instead of 24 or 32. The Freakout is an incredibly popular ride, with over 60 being sold to different showmen and parks all around the world, and still more are being ordered today, and the ride is very much still in production. In my opinion, it's one of the best small pendulum rides, and KMG as a company is known for their quality. They're essentially the B&M of traveling rides, which is why it's especially annoying that the Ohio governor has banned them from operating at the state fair, but that's a topic best saved for another video. These rides can be set up in about 4 hours, which is very impressive for a ride that is honestly pretty large and extremely forceful, as we'll get to in a moment. The Freakout that I've been on was owned by Primetime Carnival, and it was at the Cuyahoga County Fair near Cleveland, Ohio. The ride was the best of all of the rides at that fair. It was in the best shape, and many of the rides there, these are Joshua Macaroni owned rides, were not in the best shape. But this one absolutely was clearly in the best shape. It was clearly a new ride, and it was clearly taken care of. This ride was named No Limit, and it was one of the most popular rides at the fair. While I was there, none of the other rides at the fair really had any line longer than one ride cycle, but this ride was the exception to that. I actually had to plan my ride on this ride a little bit to a time when the fair was a little bit less busy, so that way I did not have to wait more than one ride cycle. But it did get a line at one point. I was able to get 2 different rides on it in different seats. These rides are often placed in a way where they swing forward over the midway and queue line, and that is how this ride was set up. It looks great and very intimidating when you're looking at the ride off-ride. This ride has a great lighting package. It uses LED lights, as all of these new Freakouts do. The older ones use incandescent lights and look a little bit dimmer, but the new ones absolutely pop on any fairground. This ride has over-the-shoulder restraints, but there is one that actually has lap bars, and according to several sources, KMG offers these rides with lap bars on request from the showman. Knowing KMG's reputation in Ohio for some stupid reason, I do not think that the lap bar version will ever come to at least this part of the country. The ride starts with riders entering the ride area after being let in by the operator. Riders can leave their shoes on the lowering floor if they choose, unlike many other pendulum rides, as the floor itself hardly folds down at all. Only the very outside edges fold, and it's only a very slight angle, so the risk of shoes falling into a ride area is very low on this ride. As riders board the ride, the pendulum itself is usually still swinging just a small amount and spinning as well, making it slightly challenging to board, especially if it's swinging or spinning a lot. But it's completely safe, and it's just the ride not being locked in its position. It's how this ride is designed. Once all riders are seated, the operators will either physically or visually check the restraints. These rides do have seat sensors, so there's very little risk of a restraint not being locked or secured, even if they just visually check. The operators then go to a safe area at the front and rear of the ride to start the ride cycle. First, the floor drops by a few feet or about a meter underneath the pendulum, and as the floor finishes lowering, the ride begins swinging. This is where you start to notice the power of this ride. It is not like those bigger pendulums that really have to build up a lot of speed. This ride immediately starts swinging very quickly and really with little hesitation. The ride quickly gets to full swing height while the seats spin on the pendulum itself. As the ride approaches full speed, each upswing offers incredible ejector airtime, with each downswing offering some crushing positive Gs that are the strongest that I've personally experienced on a pendulum. This ride, and many like it, feature blasting fair music with strobe lights that make the experience even more intense and fun. The spinning also adds to the ride experience in my opinion, as when you are on the far end of the pendulum, the negative Gs will be stronger as you reach the top of the upswing, and when you're on the close end of the pendulum, the positive G moments are stronger when you reach the bottom of the downswing. After a long cycle, as these rides typically do have since they are fair rides, and people care a lot about value with fair rides, so again, longer cycles compared to most amusement parks, after that long cycle, you'll begin to slow down. Once in the starting position, the floor raises back up, the restraints unlock, and the ride is over. Currently, the KMG Freakout is my favorite pendulum ride that I have experienced thus far. At least as of this video's creation, I've ridden the Huss Giant Frisbee, Zamperla Discovery, Giga Discovery, Discovery 360, unfortunately. Actually, some of those are half decent, but a lot of those can be quite painful. The KMG Afterburner 32, and the SBF MIDI Dance Party 120. While all of these rides have some great aspects to them, this ride is easily my favorite due to both the strengths of the positive and negative forces found on the ride and its long ride cycle that these rides usually have, although I realize that could vary from ride to ride. Since these rides are often at fairs, let's talk about the value. I paid $20 for a Ride All You Care To wristband. I thought this was a very reasonable price considering the large amount of rides on offer from Primetime at this fair. That being said, the individual ride ticket for this ride, if I remember correctly, was around $7, which is absolutely not worth it. If you do find this ride with a decently long cycle at a fair for under $5 per ride, I would definitely ride it. But beyond that, I'd recommend looking for a wristband of some type, and if that's a bad value or not available, and you've been on one of these rides before, it may be better just to skip. But if you've never been on one, I think it might be worth it to pay a little extra because these rides are truly something special, although they are also very common, so you may want to take that into consideration. That being said, to give this ride its final rating, I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. I don't think there's any way you could make a small Pendulum ride better, and the only way to get a better ride would be to exit this category altogether and look at much larger versions of the Pendulum ride. I genuinely cannot think of a way you could make this ride better, which is why I give it a perfect score. If you've never been on one of these rides, I strongly recommend trying to find one. Typically, if you live in the US or in Europe, they're usually at fairs all over both of those countries and continents. Thanks for watching this review, and we'll see you next time.